Roses are red, violets are blue. I'm Mr. B. This is Lord Marcus, and we're the Film Dogs.
That's a bitch and rhyme.
It's called a limerick.
Okay.
Or depending on which country you're in.
A limerick.
A limerick. Lord Marcus.
Hello, Mr. B. Good evening.
Good evening. Well, I mean, good morning.
Good day.
Good afternoon.
Good universe.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Let's.
You been on the news?
Oh my goodness!
Bad universe.
I avoid the news like the plague.
Like the
Actually,
plague.
I would embrace the plague as opposed to the news.
What? You're not a head in the sand person, are you?
No, like because I'm being force fed every bit of consumable media that's out there. Like I kind of like to really think for myself as much as I can because everywhere you turn, someone's telling you how to think and what to buy, and who you should vote for, and who you should worship, and who you should be friends with, and who you should accept in your society. You know what? I can make those decisions for myself. So no news, thank you.
No news is good news.
But very pleased about some of the things that happen in the United States justice system, particularly in New York. Well, I'll say what. I'm politically neutral.
They're cleaning up the streets.
They are cleaning up the streets.
Yeah. Taking the trash out.
Burn. Wicked burn.
On that note, we're not here to take the trash out. We're here to bring the good movies in.
Tidings of joy.
Great joy. We're going to talk about movies from our watch list. So these are films that we've watched recently, some together, some apart, but both loved. And we want to talk about them because they're good movies and there might be options for you to watch. It also gives us like a space to be able to talk about random movies because if you look at our whiteboard that we have here, you can't see it, but we can see it. We've got a film all the way back from 1985 in the list. We've got a film all the way from 2015, and we've even got one from 2024.
Boom. Yeah, well, like we want to really like sort of spread the films out so that if there's something that when you're faced with the unbearable decision-making on what film you're going to watch during the evening, we've got films for all ages, all sizes, all qualities of life, all generations. So we hope to be an assistance by expressing our love for some of these films that maybe you will join us on the journey of loving these films as well.
So we're going to take on 5 films each. And they're ranging from comedy, horror, sci-fi. We've got something for everybody, which is kind of the reason we do the specific watch list episodes. And they're a bit of fun as well to be able to talk about a bunch of random movies, but not have to talk for a long time, but give you some recommendations on what's out there, what's good, and what's worth watching.
Yeah.
Lord Marcus, do you want to take it away? What have you been watching that's good recently?
Okay. Well, let's start out with the film The Beast.
Yes.
By Bertrand Bonello. We saw this together at the Dendy Cinemas last week on opening night in Australia.
Yep. Shout out to Dendy Cooperoo again, one of our favorite locals.
They are not afraid to show challenging fare. They're not afraid to put on film or show in their theater films that aren't likely to attract the biggest audience. I think there was like total maybe 6 people in our show.
Yeah.
2, 4, 6.
It was one of the smaller cinemas as well in there, which is nice. They've got a bunch of options for different sizes and different size screens so that they can show some of the smaller stuff.
Now, this film was a multilingual film, so it was half in French and half in English. And the best way that I could describe it is as a sci-fi romance, and essentially it explores in the very near future, 2044, AI has helped cure the planet of its climate change, and it's taken much of the workload off of people. And there's experiments going on where they can, through a process that's not explored very deeply, remove some of the negative human emotions like fear. And it's centers predominantly around the main character, played by the very gorgeous Leah Seydoux. And I got to
She's
say,
phenomenal.
It is such a performance by her that, like, besides the film just being absolutely phenomenal, she on her own was also phenomenal. But it explores her character and one of they call it sort of a past life. We don't really know. Like it's not. This film doesn't hold your hand. You have to come to a lot of conclusions by yourself. It does cause you to think, but it is beautiful. It is original. It is interesting. And it is in no way formula. And I really want to talk a little bit more about that, because there's all of this impending doom of what's going on in Hollywood and nobody's coming to the movies. Shut the fuck up, people, because everybody went and saw Dune 2. We're only a couple months moved away from that. Guess what they didn't want? They didn't want the fucking Fall Guy. They didn't want it. You know what? What people want, maybe not be the Beast, but there are people that want that, and there's this great big divide. I think between the people that want this highly original material and then that doesn't follow a formula, so that when you go into the theater, you don't know exactly what to expect and you have to pay attention. Some people don't want to have to think that hard when they go to the movies, and I praise that. Yeah, I like being sort of challenged in the theater to figure out for myself maybe what's going on. And then what's interesting is that afterwards you could talk about with other people and get different perspectives. Man, you don't get that with some of these popcorn blockbusters. So, in her journeys, Leah Seydoux's character is it explores one of her lives in France in 1910, and as a pianist, and then it explores another in modern times, somewhere between 2014 and 2020, where she's an actress in Hollywood. And then one in 2044 where she is going through this procedure to remove these particular negative emotions from her. And her co-star in this case is George McKay. You might know him from 1917 or Captain Fantastic.
Yep.
And interesting, because we had noted after the movie was over, it's like, oh man, I didn't totally buy their chemistry. Maybe we weren't supposed to. Now he was not the original casting choice.
Oh,
they'd cast a fellow that unfortunately passed away during pre-production, and so George McKay was able to come in and fill in real quick. And he had to learn French pretty much from scratch.
Yeah, I kind of wondered if he spoke the language or if he took it chunk by chunk.
By my understanding was that he had been exposed to it in high school, but never had spoke fluently or gone to France and spoke it. So there was like a lot of heavy lifting on his part to bring life to that role. And bravo to you, Mr. McKay.
Yes.
Particularly, this is a gorgeous film. It's extremely weird. I think that half of the theater did not know what had there was only 8 of us. I think 4 people were like, what did we just see? I mean, I'm riding high. Like, I was like, oh my goodness, this is just one of the best things I've seen in a really, really long time. I loved it. I loved it so much. I'd like to say that for me, it is in my top 5 of 2023. I adored it. It was, man, it was so good. And a lot of that is because it didn't hold your hand. It was extremely challenging, but Leah Seydoux, really, really good.
Of 24 or 23?
Sorry, 24.
Yeah.
No, sorry. As I wrote it down on the
Because Letterboxd is saying 23.
It released at the Venice Film Festival in 23.
Yep. Do you want to unpack sci-fi a bit more for me as someone pretending that you haven't seen the film? Because when you say kind of the description and everything for it, and the moment people lead with the word sci-fi, I feel like a lot of the audience or people going to movies assume there's spaceships and blasters or laser beams and guns.
This is why you should come out, hang out with the Film Dogs, because we will. Lord Marcus, who is a self-appointed sci-fi expert.
Yeah.
Okay, so sci-fi definitely, I agree. The stereotype of sci-fi is Star Wars, space opera, lasers, lots of action, big thriller. Sci-fi doesn't have to be that. Now, I disagree with some of the labeling of genres of sci-fi when it's a dystopian.
Okay.
Because that's an imagining of the future. And I don't think science fiction necessarily has to mean the future, or if something takes place in the future, that
The
it has
future,
to be
Conan?
the sci-fi. So, but in this case, I think what the sci-fi is referring to is that it's exploring areas of artificial intelligence, which is science-based, and it's a narrative, and it's using the imagination. So, like, let's just break it down to its most simple concept: is if it has to do with technology,
Yeah.
then for me, or maybe not just technology, but the learning of the natural sciences, and if it's in fiction, and that's all that it takes. So 12 Monkeys doesn't take place in outer space, but it's still like there's time traveling. Time traveling is considered to be science fiction.
Yep.
Now this, The Beast as a science fiction film on its own, you wouldn't know that because a third of the movie takes place in 1910 Paris.
Yeah, or even 2015 or whatever, the modern era
In Los Angeles
as well. Yeah,
and so like the very brief moments that are spent in 2044, they're extremely interesting. The last scene in particular, for anyone that loves David Lynch, this was a direct, super direct homage to Twin Peaks, in a way that was not a rip, it was not a ripoff, but it was you could tell this guy really loves David Lynch a lot.
Yeah, I already recommended the movie to two friends that are Lynchians.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I would imagine they would like it very much, even though I would never say that. I wouldn't mistake this for a Lynch film, but I'll tell you, I would compare it very favorably to like a Jonathan Glazer film.
Yeah.
I would, and I've always sort of compared Glazer to Kubrick, and so like in this case, I would also compare The Beast to a Kubrick film. This director just has so much virtuoso control over the tone of the film, what it looks like when when it should have its delicate phrasing and when it should hit you with some hard action. I can't say enough about it. Loved it. Go see it.
Yeah, it's a longer movie. But would there be much that you would try and take away from it?
Nope.
It has quite distinct stories, multiple stories within the one.
I could have gone for another half hour, easy. Oh man, I can't say enough about this film. I really loved it, and I don't imagine it's going to get a lot of love. It was a 2023 release, so it's not going to be up for many awards, darlings. But it's getting pretty good critical reviews, and Léa Seydoux is getting some really good recognition. I don't think it'll be enough to help get people past the sort of the weirdness of it or the non-hand holding, because I think
that's what it's got against it. But at the same time, it's the kind of film that if you're into like music, it's the one that really lets you take your own interpretation to it.
Big time.
And if you know that going into it, it probably makes it more enjoyable. Kind of once the movie opens, you kind of know that that's what's going to happen. So you just got to prepare yourself. But I loved the ride all the way through because there were so many different lenses that you could watch it through. There are so many different scenes or the way that they put it together where you wonder if maybe you're still in her brain, or could we be in his brain, or is this actually even happening? There's so many different parts in it that really make you question,
because
is it real?
Even after the film, and we tried to find some place to eat in Brisbane after a movie at 9:00 and couldn't find anywhere, we were having a discussion, and I think we both had wildly different interpretations about what was happening and what was going on. And I spent the rest of the evening looking at reviews online and sort of letterboxing, and nobody sort of really came to an awesome conclusion that I think definitively says exactly what has happened or what's going to happen. And I don't think any of that's important. It's just something. It's a film to be experienced for sure. I can't say enough about it. 5 stars for me.
Yeah, performances were phenomenal.
All the way. Oh my God.
It took a bit for me to settle into George Mackey and their relationship, but as the film unpacks, it
totally.
You're okay with it.
Yeah, because at first I thought it was like, oh man, the chemistry is just not there. But I don't really think in a way that it was really meant to be like it wasn't it's not a burning romance film, even though it is about romance. At the end of the day, that is definitely not what it's about. And the way that they their chemistry at the end of the movie and that closing scene, like that for me was the reason that it only worked because of their very specific chemistry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I can't say enough about it.
Fantastic. Which takes me to film number one that I want to talk about. And this is a 2023 film as well, by Christopher Borgli. Is that how you would pronounce his last name?
That's how I would pronounce his last name, Borgli.
And he made the film Dream Scenario, which is a Nicolas Cage kind of drama. Would you consider this one sci-fi because of the themes?
No, I'll tell you why.
Just because of your definition of what we just talked about.
Yes, but there was not really any technology that was employed. I guess like very lightly at the end. But this is more, I would be more apt to call this more of a light horror. Like it's never really explained what's happening to cause the dream. I
would really call it, it is a black comedy.
It's a black comedy for sure.
A black comedy, and it's a humanity film. It's really making you take a look at society a bit.
A psychology film. But I just don't find, like I know what we said about The Beast, and like I guess there could be some similarities, but the fact that there's no technology being used to sort of induce, and like it's largely left, I think, to imagination on what's caused the synopsis to happen, and I don't think that. I think towards the end, maybe it's can be a little more controlled, and there's some science in it, but I wouldn't say that it propelled. That wasn't the genesis of the seed of the story. But if somebody wanted to argue for it, I could see that.
This is a film that if you're, we said Nick Cage, if you had any way, shape, or form, like put up with, love Nick Cage, you should watch this film. He really carries it. I think we were kind of talking about it when the first time you saw it, and you said it maybe reminded you of a similar character that he had played in adaptation.
Absolutely. And I still wildly think that's kind of like if you took the director who's been like, I just did be Charlie Kaufman, and
yeah, it is very Kaufman-esque.
Which is great, like sort of revisiting that character. And I know you really liked the adaptation a lot, and I wasn't crazy about it because of that character, and that did impact this film a little bit for me. Even though, like for this story, I liked that character so much better. But man, what a loser!
Yes. So it just follows. It follows the story of a professor who has his doctorates. That is kind of the back seat. Taking the back seat in life. He has his doctorates, he's teaching, but he's kind of coasting in life. You kind of put that together with kind of interactions with some of his family members and maybe ex-workmates in the similar fields as him. But it really centers around that he somehow, in some phenomenon, shows up in people's dreams. And not just some people, but like a lot of people in the world, and just shows up as like a third party character in their dreams, and kind of becomes overnight insta famous, viral. But things take a turn when he starts showing up in people's nightmares as well, and that's when. I was sucked into the movie from the first minute till closing credits. And when it does that swap to kind of the nightmare, I really kind of like the story it tells about society and how we maybe cancel culture, a lot of things. Because the point, I can't say the point, I didn't make the movie. The truth is, he has done nothing wrong. I have just showed up in your dreams. We've never met. You've never seen me before. Why am I in your dreams? I don't know. Your mind has put me in there. And what happens to you and your dreams with me has nothing to do with me. Lord Marcus, I have a question.
I have an answer.
Has Darjeeling ever had a dream with you in it and woken up upset with you?
I don't think so. But I know the phenomena you're referring to. I don't think that's ever happened to us.
Okay, that happens to me a lot. Just ask Mr. B. Mr. B. Mr. B. Do you show up in your wife's dreams? Yeah. Are they good dreams? Apparently not.
Are there waking dreams?
Yeah. What happened? She wakes up, it hasn't happened in a while, which is good, but there's been times where she's woken up in the morning and she's like, "You were in my dreams last night." And I go, "Oh, great.
Hey, you remember what
What happened?" And she's like, "You were horrible." And she's upset with me for the day because of something that happened in a dream. And I go, it's not real.
As Jason Momoa, as Duncan Idaho, said to Paul Atreides, played by Timothée Chalamet, everything
Dune.
good happens in real life. So let's not assign too much value there. Hey, look, I'll say this, that I think it absolutely is an indictment on how modern social media tendencies cast judgment and have the power to cast judgment and lasting judgment and a real judgment. Like, anybody can be vilified and crucified without any say or any defense, and their lives can be turned upside down. Oh man, like it was crazy good movie. So A24 too. Goodness.
Yeah, and good supporting cast as well. Michael Cera does show up in it as a talent agent. And Tim Meadows as well. I always like it when he shows up in kind of a comedy thing because he does that very well.
I really like Julianne Nicholson, who played his wife. She's kind of that girl.
Yeah,
seen her quite a bit. So she's in The Mayor of Easttown. I really liked her in this movie with Willem Dafoe called Togo, which is like an Alaskan dog centric.
Oh yeah, you've mentioned it, but I've still actually never watched it.
It is, it's really good. If you like dog movies, for sure. That you've already. If you are a lover of dog films, then you would have seen this film. And if you are not yet in the part of society that does not refer to themselves as dog movie film lovers, I recommend it. Anyway, she in this movie she plays the wife, and I think she did a really good job. I found it kind of heartbreaking. A little bit of a heartbreaking story, but man, he was such a loser.
It's all heartbreaking. Nick Cage plays a loser so well, but you feel for him in the movie. It is a fantastic film. Mrs. B actually ended up watching it with me. It was one of those where it could have gone either way. Worried, would she like it? Would she not like it? But the moment we started selling in the film, she loved it. And I loved this as well. I ended up giving it like 4.5 stars.
I only went with 4. I think predominantly it upset me as
it upset me too.
Yeah, particularly sort of as having a social media identity that we share as the film dogs. It's like this is not fair. People haven't earned the right to criticize, and I just hate that. When criticism is leveled at you that has been earned, I celebrate it, and I love honest criticism. But people that are just mean and trolls and are just doing it, they're too lazy to form like valid judgments. Man, that's depressing for me. And this movie sort of highlighted that in a way that didn't make me feel good. I probably should give it at least another 0.5 star for doing that, because it still worked as a powerful tool to make me feel something. Yeah, but I did. I liked it a lot for sure.
Lord Marcus, take us away with your second film.
My second film is a film called Subtraction, and it is from a filmmaker out of Iran. And I would say that this is going to be in deep contention for my number one film of 2022.
Wow.
Of which we know one of my favorite movies of all time was made in 2022. This movie by the extremely talented Manhi Haghihi It was made in 2022. This fellow was born and raised in Tehran, but he did philosophical studies in Ontario, I think Montreal. And so I think there's this very strong Villeneuve-ish quality to his approach to storytelling. And it essentially, the synopsis of this movie is that a woman sees her husband going towards an apartment, and he's supposed to be out of town. So she follows him and assumes that he's having an affair. But what it turns out is that they have found their exact doubles. And so this man looks exactly like her husband, and his wife, doppelgangers. And this person's wife looks exactly like the main character. So we got two people that are really carrying this film. And what happens with how these characters interact with each other is it's Hitchcockian. It is it's a mystery. It's a thriller. It's interesting. But behind the scenes, what's interesting as well for me is that, like, what do you think of when someone talks about Iran? What would be the very first thing that you think of?
America at war.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think that a large amount of people that would listen to our podcast might think the same. Like, that would be the first initial thought. Obviously,
you have to know that laugh wasn't meant to be offensive. It was just, it is a interesting question to ask. White people. I'm white. Americans, or what do you think of Iran? Well, the truth is we don't probably know much about it, do we?
There's not a lot of exposure because, like, in America, and I wouldn't say as much in Australia, but certainly, like, worldwide, it's always like, Iran's bad. I'm telling you right now that you should never judge a culture by what its government does or what your government tells you to feel about a certain country or people or class of people. Because this film really shows that we have way more in common with the people of Iran than we don't, because they use smartphones, they drive the same cars that we do, they have stoplights, they have, like, everything that we do in our life is not like all these little Iranian tomb raiders that are out in the desert, planning jihads. Like, these are people and families that are massively creative. I can tell you, this Iranian director, it's impossible. I looked for every single other film that he's made, and this is the only one available for me to find and watch, which is a real shame. Tell
me how you came to the film.
I'm pretty sure that I came to it via Letterboxd.
Okay.
I was looking for some David Lynch lists. And one of the lists was about doppelgangers. And so, like, doppelgangers are a big feature of Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me and for Twin Peaks, the series. And so so doing this David Lynch search, the movies of David Lynch showed up in a Letterboxd list, and Subtraction was one of the films that was in there, along with Holy Motors, by the way.
Yeah.
So, like, here's a big shout out to Letterboxd. Thank you, because I have been gifted two of my most favorite films of all time by some other users out there that, like, if you're looking for, like, if you know what your vibe is and you want to own that vibe, and I own my Lynch vibe.
Yeah.
I'm able to take some chances every now and then. But when someone says, hey, I favorably compare this to something that I already love, that's how I came to it. And so I want to help spread the word, because nobody's talking about this film. It was made in 2022. Distribution outside of Iran was really difficult, so it's taken 2 years to to play. Now, I bought a copy of it on YouTube because I'd put it in my watch list for a while, and it just became available to purchase or rent on YouTube.
Nice.
So I went for it, and man, like, I can't tell you how much I love this film. It let me just say this, but because we're dealing about doppelgangers, and it's not giving it, like, it is not giving anything away. It's so interesting psychologically. So let's say that if you were dissatisfied in your life and you met your double, or you met the double of your wife after being married for 15 or 20 years, and what if you had chemistry with the other version of your wife? But what if your wife had chemistry with the other version of you? and vice versa. And what does that mean?
Great question.
And this film does not tell you any of those things. Like, it's not holding your hand. It doesn't. But
Okay.
But it makes you think those things, like
Yep.
just naturally. The tension builds. Oh my! Like this. I'm in the middle of this film, this 5-star film, thinking like, oh my God, I hope Brenton doesn't watch this because come 22 draft, I want it for myself. I don't have to worry about it.
Challenge accepted.
Man, it was so good. Look, it is Iranian. It is in subtitles. It is a foreign film. It is a weird film. So this is a very niche. So the only people that I will recommend this to, if you love Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, if you love Twin Peaks, if you love David Lynch's Lost Highway, if you love Holy Motors, if you love Enemy by Denis Villeneuve, or even Incendies, it's not a big like it's a thriller, but there's not a lot of action. Like you have to just really be into like a narrative wonder world that you'll never be able to really figure out. It doesn't. Yeah, look. Obviously, these first two films that I've picked are about figuring out things for yourself, and critical thinking is a must. But if that sounds like your bag, I promise you this will be one for the ages. Boom. Subtraction.
And have you ever come across your doppelganger, or has Darjeeling ever said that somebody is your doppelganger?
Nicolas Cage.
Which era?
At Dream Scenario. I show up in people's dreams. No, I don't know.
You've really shot yourself in the foot if people are imagining what you look like, because Dream Scenario Nick Cage is not really a...
Hey, that's okay. That'll just be like, if we ever meet out in public, it'd be like, oh, you're a lot better looking than I thought you'd be. As opposed if I said I look like Chris Hemsworth, be like, oh, God, what the fuck's that guy thinking? All right. What's number 2 for you, Mr. B?
Well, this was another shared watch as well, and we went to the cinema for this one, and we didn't want to dedicate an episode necessarily to it, but we do want to talk about the film. And the film is none other than George Miller's Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Number 5 in the saga. A prequel to Mad Max Fury Road, the one with Charlize Theron and Tom Hardy. Now, this one swaps out Charlize Theron's character for Anya Taylor-Joy, and the kind of main bad guy antagonist is Chris Hemsworth with a prosthetic nose. Named Dementis. Lord Marcus. Did you enjoy this film?
I enjoyed it. I liked it.
Do you have thoughts on...
I have infinite number of thoughts.
He's got an infinite number of thoughts.
I don't want to hijack your conversation.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Then I won't let you hijack it.
Okay.
Credits, opening credits rolled, and it's maybe a long intro if you're waiting to see Anya Taylor-Joy, because she doesn't really show up until an hour into it. But I'm not going to lie. When Hemsworth showed up on screen, I wondered where it was going to go. I mean, we knew that he was the bad guy, but you kind of wondered how he's going to play that role and how it's going to fit in the film, and if we could ever forget that he's Chris Hemsworth, or if it mattered. Personally, didn't mind it. And actually, there were moments in it where if you were to look at me sitting next to me in the cinema, I had a big smile on my face during some of the action scenes, or even with some of the stuff with Chris Hemsworth. I enjoyed it. It's a long film. It definitely could have some fat cut off of it. Because like I said, Anya Taylor-Joy, who's meant to be our kind of main actress for the film, though Aaliyah Brown, who plays the young version, is phenomenal. I didn't mind it. But my mind is still trying to figure out where maybe this film sits.
I think
in the list.
I think you're overcomplicating it. I think for whatever reason you're overcomplicating it. I think you know exactly where it sits.
It's not as good as Fury Road. It's not as good as Mad Max, because that is the opening of the whole saga. That gave us George Miller. That gave us Mel Gibson. That gave us Australia cinema. Hmm.
All right.
I'll let you talk for a bit about it, because we watched this together. This was a film that I drafted in our anticipation draft of 2024. He's been working on the film for quite a while. It definitely had the delays through the years. So it was a highly anticipated film for a few different reasons, because of director, because of the saga, because of Fury Road, his last one of it. And I was really looking forward to it, and I was doing my best to stay away from the trailers on it, though I did need to watch a bit of them to kind of. I did wonder. I wondered where he was going with it, and I don't think the trailers really gave enough away, which is good. But I'll let you talk.
Furiosa. Dear Furiosa, I liked you a lot. I wanted to love you, but I did not.
Could you make this into a limerick?
I probably could. It'd be very short. I will try to wrap up. Look, there's a couple things that I about the film itself. I did like it. It was, there were parts of it that were a lot of fun, and I mean a lot of fun. I also was giddy through some of the scenes. Unfortunately, there was a direct mirror effect on how giddy I was to some of the other scenes where I was like, man, this is, I don't know what's going on here. Like it felt so unoriginal. One of the things that was so great about Fury Road was that it was original.
Yeah.
And it burned with life. And this for me just sort of felt like middle age. It just sort of lacked some lackluster. Loved Chris Hemsworth. But I got to say, like, I just want to put this out there. Like, so we talk about maybe trimming the fat off of it.
Yeah.
You know what would have been, for me, the most awesome film possible? That this was not Furiosa, a Mad Max prequel story, but Dementis, and have nobody else at all from the original, maybe a Morton Joe, just as the closer, because he's fighting with someone. It could still have been a prequel. But why do we need Furiosa? Like, this is, as a prequel, like we know where everything's going. Like, we know how things are going to end up for the main character. So there's no incentive. There's just no incentive on how, like, who cares how she got a prosthetic arm? Like that. Like, that's not important to her character in Fury Road. I thought that it was really frustrating. I thought the narrative was really frustrating. But I loved Chris Hemsworth.
Mm-hmm.
But he was so tonally different to everybody else in the film that it was kind of like, it was kind of strange. How I think that he was in one movie and everybody else was in a different movie. And I think he was the only one that was enjoying himself through the whole thing.
But I think you're right. But let me offer the side thought of, that's actually why I liked that. It because it helped paint the more of, the dude's crazy. Like, he's just another version of a
but he was in a dark comedy, and everybody else was kind of like in some sort of godforsaken wilderness war movie that they hated being. That I don't feel like anybody else was enjoying themselves. And I think he was the only one that's like, man, he's Australian. He's in a Mad Max film, and I think he was radiating joy.
Yeah,
and he's meant to be a little evil, but he was my favorite part of this movie by far. So entertaining, and I would be interested in a cut that only had the Dementis scenes in it.
So, if you gave a different supporting cast, would it be better? What?
Not really.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. Because I love Anya Taylor-Joy. I love Tom Burke, and their chemistry together. They didn't explore that like nearly effectively enough.
Yeah, but it is a bit more of the copy and paste of literally Fury Road. If you dove into that more,
everything that had War Boys in it was like a cut scene from Fury Road.
Yeah,
man. My most honest assessment is I enjoyed this movie. I liked it. I'm a huge lover of the franchise. I am vocally outspoken about how much I love the franchise. something similar happened when Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome came out. Everybody was seeing the Road Warrior, and then Thunderdome comes out, and it was not the same universe. It was not the same character. Like, it was, but it wasn't. And this is what's happened here. And but I gotta just say, man, it bored. Like, now that we're talking about it, I'm bored talking about it. Like, I don't know if I will watch it again. I don't know. But you know what?
Definitely will.
But you know what bores me more is all of this bullshit talk. It's a flop. And what's happened to Hollywood, and what's not putting people in seats, and the alarm bells are sounding. Look, people, don't listen to this. You could press the button that says, shut your face. We don't want to hear that anymore. Hollywood's not broken. Here's the thing. Studios always, they want to bet on making sequels. This movie's straight up boring. And I think the word of mouth indicates that it's boring. And people don't want to spend their hard-earned money going into movie theaters to see boring films. And this is a boring film. It is. I'm sorry. Like, not every single moment, not every scene is boring.
Yeah.
But overall, man, it's average. It's just an average film. And like, that's the word of mouth. That's why people aren't going to see it. Guess what? It happens all the time. People hated The Phantom Menace when it came out. They're still banging it. But 25 years later, there's an audience for it. That's what will happen with That's what will happen with Furiosa. Like, it will be a beloved member of the franchise. Mm-hmm. But like right now, the studios aren't going to make billions of dollars off of it. Nobody wants to see it.
Yeah.
Your diehards will want to see it, but people are going to wait for streaming. Like, I'm not going to recommend anybody to go see it, but if you do, definitely see it in the theater, because the action scenes are rocking. But you know what you could do? You could save yourself $25 and the heartache of getting to your theater, and just put on Fury Road. You're going to get the same exact experience, because the best scenes are like deleted scenes from Fury Road. I'm really disappointed in it, actually, to tell you the truth. I wanted to love it. That's the biggest disappointment. I will get over that. Especially once all this media frenzy dies down. It's like, oh man, why didn't anybody show up to see Mad Max Furiosa? Well, because it wasn't that great of a movie. That's why they didn't show up. It's not because Hollywood's broken. It's not because the studios are broken. It's not because movies are done. It's because this just wasn't a good enough movie. It just wasn't. I'm sorry. Like, dude, like,
prequels are hard.
And I wanted you to have a 5-star film for your team for this year.
Yeah.
I honestly do.
And it's one of those, if you were to, like you said, though, make the Hemsworth version, or like make it a separate film. If you were to say none of the Mad Max films existed and this one only exists in 2024, great film. But the problem is we have Fury Road, which is the next film after this, and this is the prequel. We know where it's going to go. Yeah, it's hard to write a prequel.
Like, all the best action scenes have already been done. Like an hour of this movie has already been done in Fury Road. It's just so disappointing for me.
Yeah.
I'm just being honest. Like, I don't want to piss anybody off. And this is like, I've read these. Oh my God. Like, sometimes Letterboxd is the bane of my existence. This is even better than Fury Road. It's 5 stars. Man, get off the studio's nipples. You know, like, come on. Like, this was anybody that thinks this is better than Fury Road, they are full of shit. They are sucking up. For whatever reason, I guarantee, like, anybody that's seen Fury Road and has seen Furiosa, there's something sinister going on. If somebody thinks that Furiosa is better than Fury Road, like George Miller still got it. He never lost it. So come on, like,
he's not lost
George
it.
Miller. Jesus Christ, Fury Road dominates. Fuck it, and you own that too. So, like, I'm celebrating your draft pick. Just not the Furiosa one. I'm really not trying to bag it out, but I'm so frustrated with the content of the conversations around it, of like, what does this mean? It means the same exact thing when every other movie doesn't do good that people want to do good. You know, like, that's just how it is. Like, this isn't the first time this has happened where there has been a flop. It's not even the first time this year. You know, like, unfortunately, hey, sorry guys, nothing's broken except for this film. Like, this film just wasn't good enough to be in the conversation for drawing people in for a $750 million profit. You know, it just ain't gonna happen. Not like that. You know, that's how I feel about it.
You know, Barbie did make $1 billion.
I know, but there's the thing. It's like, okay, that should have been the template of, like, if the problem is that people aren't getting into the theater, like, I would way rather have Furiosa than Barbie. But if it would spare me this bullshit discourse about how Hollywood's broken, or what's going on, and movies are so done and everything's TV and da 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 da. People's taste change. Happens every single year. Happens every single season. Happens the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. Exactly. You could put out Avengers 6 right now, nobody would show up to it because everybody's sick to fucking death of the Avengers. But if you know how we change that, well, we'd have something different to complain about. But put out the sequel. Put out the sequel to Barbie. If the studios, if you want to make money, you've had the template. Do another big, massive event where you make a great biopic of some insane genius as the reason that worlds are dying, copped with a popcorn feel-good pop culture movie that is about feminism, da-da-da-da. Marry those two together, try to replicate that success, instead of making a shitty fucking prequel to one of the best movies of all time. Oh man, I'm trying not to be fired up about it, but like I have quit listening to podcasts. I have stopped following people, and I have turned off a certain amount of social media. I'm so tired of this. Like, it's clickbait.
Yeah.
What if we did on our Film Dogs Instagram page? Movies are dead. Tune in to find out why. Like, there's nothing that would drive me more insane, like on a postal rampage, than that. I'm saying red.
Well, let's not see red. Let's see film number 3 for Lord Marcus, which is a cracker of a film. Swing.
May December by the very fabulous Todd Haynes.
Hainesy.
Now, this was about the last film that we had left over from 2023. I don't know. Like, I have no idea why this film didn't get a earlier release in Australia. My God, we just got it last week, dropped on streaming, but it never came to the theater. That we did not have the option to even like drive 2 hours to a theater that would be showing independent cinema. This never played. So, May December, by the fabulous Todd Haynes. It explores, starring Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman, and the premise is Natalie Portman plays a television actress who is arrived in this little suburb of Savannah on Tybee Island that she's researching a role, and in this town 20 years prior, a high school teacher, no, not a high school teacher, a pet shop employee. She was 36 at the time and had an affair with a 12-year-old boy.
Yep.
And she had his baby while in prison, and after he got out of prison, they got married, and they have been together ever since. And now he's 36 at the time. He's at the age where she was when they had started their relationship. And it explores Natalie Portman researching the couple's lives, the life of both of them and their history together. And it just examines the life of this couple and how the community reacts to them and how her former family reacts to them, and how an actress that's taken on a very challenging role can be affected by the psychology of such a thing. Man, I loved this film so much. Man, it was so good. It was so good.
Well, I mean, you were right when you were saying high school teacher, because were you a tabloid guy back in the 90s? Because it is loosely based.
I thought that was what drove me to it, because I sort of remember what the original source of the inspiration for the screenplay was. My
aunt, who I adore, Aunt Bridget, love you. She always had the tabloids at her house. So whenever we go to visit, I'm just as a kid, because we never had those in my family. You just thumbing through like Bradgelina, and this was all over the tabloids.
Their kid had a fifth eye.
Yeah, this was a big one in the 90s. From 90, it was 97, and loosely based off of Mary Kay Letourneau, who was a school teacher who pleaded guilty to 2 accounts of rape for a 12-year-old student in her class, and gave birth to his children, and they later married after prison as well. So it is not the story, but it's adapting what would that relationship look like? What could it look like? And maybe what would it look like in their adult years of this couple? So having Natalie Portman playing what I would call a Natalie Portman role, if you've watched Black Swan or even Jackie, how she's kind of becoming a. I want to know if you'll agree with me on this or you'll crucify me.
I'll crucify you.
Probably will. See if you can follow me here. She's almost doing her Daniel Day-Lewis as a female, of how.
Now I won't crucify you, but I.
Do you see where I'm going though? Of
I do.
where she's trying. If you look at how she's played Jackie,
She's not taking fluff roles.
She's not taking fluff roles. She's taking some hard roles, and they're pretty out there.
And this one, I would imagine, like it's challenging material. But it, for me, in no way was anything offensive. But it was deeply interesting. Like, it was so interesting, the psychology and how the filmmaker chose to pace the film to where you get to. I would like to give a shout out to Charles Melton, who played the husband. Man, what a performance! I don't think I'd ever seen him in anything before.
He's big from TV.
Yeah,
Mrs. B knows him a lot. And that's where he cut his teeth, really.
My goodness. He really, I would say, almost MVP of the film. Because really, like, he's the source of all the tension, even though he's still, he's never grown up. He's still, in a way, 12 years old. Anyway, the film sort of explores the psychological impact on everybody, not just Julianne Moore's character and his character, but she was married before with family.
Correct.
And how the community viewed this. And it's extremely nostalgic for me. I was in the United States Marine Corps, and I was stationed in Beaufort, South Carolina. And this was one of the places that we would go and spend weekends. And the communities there, they're small and they're tight knit, and their age is old. Like, people don't leave this community ever. So like the families stay there forever. So when it's rocked by controversy and people they deal with it. And
they chose to stay in their community, and they talk about it as well. Yeah. We're not going anywhere. Yeah. Why should we go?
My goodness. Look, I thought that I would like this film, but I borderline love it, and I could probably even grow to definitely love it. But I liked it. So I liked it so much, near love. So interesting, so psychologically interesting, how the characters are portrayed, what they're thinking. I also like I'll explore this theme a little bit later, but I like when it explores, I enjoy when tables are a bit turned, because traditionally we have film, and it's acceptable when an older man is with a younger woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we've got an older woman with a younger man, I like talking about that a lot. Yeah. So it's interesting, like, from that perspective, that it's sort of flipping that script a little bit on the age old, where an 80-year-old man can, like Robert De Niro or Al Pacino, that they're still making babies.
Yeah. Still having kids.
Yeah. Anyway, May, December for me, definitely like a 4.5, solid triple.
It is a solid film.
Yeah,
screenplay, acting, everything about it. Mrs. B enjoyed it. We watched it together.
Probably not in my top 10, but like 23 was so stacked with so many good films.
Yeah.
I'd venture to say definitely top 20, maybe top 15. Didn't crack my top 10 though.
Yeah, I reckon this would definitely crack a top 15. It is so it's painful as well. They wrote it so well, and the story is so close because of the Mary Kay kind of embellishments on the story and kind of the interpretation of what those relationships could look like. And I loved it. And it is shot a few different ways as well, because if you do read reviews or you kind of listen to the soundtrack that they fit for it, or even some of the acting choices, and the writing. They list it as a comedy as well.
That's
and they
right.
tell you to
That's crazy.
rewatch it. And on the second watch, you catch the comedy, which I haven't done a rewatch yet. But
Do you think that would work on if we put that in our episode descriptions? The show was a comedy. You should go back and listen to it again. Tell us what you,
definitely.
Tell us what you think.
Definitely. Play this episode in reverse.
Oh, and then play like a nice E minor ostinato over top of it. Yeah, I'm all about that. Yeah, let's do it.
Which brings me to my number 3. And this is none other than a story by Charlie Kaufman, directed by Michael Gondry, from 2004, starring Elijah Wood, post Lord of the Rings. Who else? Kirsten Dunst, Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I love this movie.
How much do you love it?
It's an 11.
Oh, let's turn it up.
This movie goes to 11 for me. That's how much I love it.
But why not just make everything else a 9 and then it could be 10?
But this one's 11.
Fair enough. I think this is like Jim Carrey's. By far, this is the best Jim Carrey, and I like a lot of. Like, I'm a big Jim Carrey fan. This for me, there's not even I don't even think there's a close second. This is my favorite.
Dude,
Jim
the
Carrey
casting is utterly incredible. The entire supporting cast, because I didn't even mention that Mark Ruffalo's in it. We've also got Tom Wilkinson, who's a very big that guy. David Cross,
Rest in peace, Mr.
yes,
Wilkinson.
R.I.P. And David Cross shows up in it as well, playing a David Cross character. Mrs. B does not enjoy Jim Carrey, and I know a lot of women do not enjoy Jim Carrey. Was that a fair statement for you?
Very fair. And I don't think that's specific to any particular culture. I think that he's offensive to women for some reason. Not all women. I think that's too much of a general statement. But most of the women that I have had conversations about with Jim Carrey, I would find that they are not. He is not to their taste.
Yeah,
but not. I would say with this film, not necessarily. I think maybe largely because he was. Ace Ventura, and then he was in The Mask, and that there was like a very goofy comedy.
He's another version of Adam Sandler.
Yeah,
people find it hard to see him in dramas,
and I think that kind of character speaks to frat boys, to college age males that are
high school boys,
drinking their faces off. Yeah, or high school boys. Like for young men and not critical thinkers. And I think that deep down, I don't think I'm saying anything that's really out of turn, but like for me, that would not be in any kind of case where I don't want to talk to people that are worshiping at the altar of what high school boys want to talk about. I can't imagine that I think as men, when we're talking about what films women like, we sort of are looking and thinking maybe more about date nights, but I'm not just thinking about that. I'm thinking about maybe films that draw women to the theater, whether it be Barbie or anything that or Love Lies Bleeding or Tar or anything. I just think that there's just not too much about the stereotypical Jim Carrey role that outside of going to the theater for a popcorn film, like it leaves a long lasting impression, like Dumb and Dumber or The Mask or Ace Ventura. But this is a totally different film, and I think that he's widely hailed for this one. Yeah, I can't say enough about it, but I'm not trying to hijack your conversation.
No, you're fine. This tells the story of Jim Carrey's character, Joel Barish. I love that they give him a last name and they use it a lot. And of Kate Winslet, they are in a relationship. Her name is Clementine, and she has multicolored hair throughout the whole movie. He plays a loser. less of a loser than maybe some of the other losers we've talked about today. But he describes himself as boring, and later in the film, she describes him as boring.
Oh, he's like the human version of Furiosa.
Oh, shots fired again.
Wicked bird.
And Kate Winslet's character plays the crazy person.
I would say fanciful.
Yeah. Do you got any other synonyms? Give me some more synonyms for Clementine's character. Free spirit.
Yeah,
I wouldn't label hippie. I would label free spirit. Hippie's got a certain connotation to it.
Post hippie.
Post hippie.
New age.
And she has decided that she would like to erase Joel from her memory. And this is a service that is offered from kind of like a little tiny doctor's office.
So this would be kind of more science fiction.
Correct. And in fact, what having already talked about The Beast and Dream Scenario, if you have watched either of those films already or are going to watch either of those films, this is actually a lot of these go hand in hand. They're great watches, and they're all very different from each other, but kind of have a common thread. This one's more of a drama, romance, dreamlike state. And so she's chosen to erase Joel from her memory, and Joel finds out, without her telling him, and is obviously heartbroken, and he decides to do the same. Go to the same doctor and get her erased from his memory. And the film really unpacks relationships, the up and down of them, the
joy and the sort of the gravity of relationships.
Yeah, it's close to the almost the feelings of the we've talked about. Was it Blue Valentine? What's it called?
Yeah, Blue Valentine.
Yeah, with Gosling.
Yeah.
Of how does a relationship get this bad? And it doesn't really paint the whole picture, but you see all these different cuts of dinner conversations of where they can't stand each other, or where they talk to each other in the apartment. They end up moving in together. And you kind of see their relationship breakdown with some different conversations where they kind of get to the point where they can't stand each other. And she's chosen, she erases him from her memory. She wants to move on with her life. And if you're anybody who's ever been in a relationship before and has had a relationship end, I like that it asks the question, if you had an option to erase that part of your life or that memory of that person, would you do it? And yeah, I don't think you can really answer that question. I think the movie helps maybe paint that picture for you.
I think that like some of these other films, there is eerily a common thread that runs through a lot of these films, which begs some analysis in itself. But with Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, you're right. And I think that it says something about the psychology of people and even how it affects them. So the thought of an ex-romantic partner being so detested by you to have you completely erased, like, how does that make you feel? Like, regardless of what she feels enough to do it, like, it's sort of exploring, like this. What's interesting? That's so interesting. This could be remade and redone in so many different ways. But
yeah,
we're thinking about the impact it has on Jim Carrey's character, and that's it. Like, we're not really saying, like, what was the trauma that caused this, and was it justified? Like, we're sort of being sympathetic with his character.
Mm-hmm.
And we're only shown like his version of things and how they got there.
Yes.
And we know that perspective is a deadly roulette game. So this is such a great talking piece of a film. I love talking about it. I love talking about it, what it means. And I love that it sometimes, what it does, it puts men in their place. And let's be real. A lot of men need to often be put in their place when
Yeah.
it comes to matters of the heart and relationships and romances. And this, and this is a good one. It's like, you know what? Say what you want, do what you want. I will erase you from my memory. And like, what could be worse than that? It's like, you can't come back from that.
Can't come back from that.
Or can you?
Well, you kind of have to watch the film to find out.
I would implore anyone that's not seen it to see it. And if you've not seen it in a very long time, I would implore you to put it onto your rewatch list. If you are a person that likes to watch films more than once.
Let me
which I am.
Let me use the word beautiful. I think it's beautiful. The story is so compelling and so well written. The supporting cast is great. And their interwoven stories as well in their relationships, it really puts a magnifying glass on a lot of relationships. Some married, not married, some dating, not dating, single people. It touches on a lot of them. And for someone who is married but who has been in past relationships, some good, some really not that good. I love that it asks that question. And for me, it is a comforting film to come back to in a, not even nostalgic light, because it probably reminds me more of my bad relationships that I have been in before. But would you erase them from your memory? That's kind of what it says.
And this brings us to our very new segment. Better than Garden State or worse than Garden State? Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Where does it fall?
It is definitely better than Garden State.
There you have it, folks, from Mr. B. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Better than Garden State.
Let me add a caveat.
And back to our
Garden State has a better soundtrack. But the soundtrack for Eternal Sunshine does fit. There are less needle drops in it, though. Yeah, but add it to your list. Add it to your list.
Jang, bajing, bajong.
Lord Marcus, number 4.
I have spoken. Number 4, the fourth commandment of this evening's episode, the Triangle of Sadness. Now, the Triangle of Sadness was the 2022 winner of the Cannes Festival, of which has just recently wrapped up. And so I wasn't aware that it was the Palme winner. So I was like, let me look a little deeper into that, because it's weird. Because there was another film that played there that I loved, Decision to Leave. I was like, all right, that should have been the winner. Like for the films that I've seen that were at that festival, I thought Decision to Leave was my number one, but I hadn't seen Triangle of Sadness, and that was largely due to some podcasts that just sort of indicated that it wasn't my brand of film. Now, I didn't like, I'm not wowing about it, but it was way better than I thought. And it stars Woody Harrelson. It was directed by Mr. Ruben Östlund, and I've not seen any of his films. And outside of Woody Harrelson, I don't think I'd really seen any of the other people in this film.
Yeah, Swedish filmmaker, and he's probably more known for this one internationally than any of his other ones.
It was also nominated for Best Picture for the Academy Awards for 2022. So that was enough to be like, all right, I've not seen it. I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to let any other film critics decide for me what I need to watch. I was very pleasantly surprised. Now, it's the synopsis is it. One of my problems with the synopsis is my problem with the movie, but the synopsis is that super successful, uber rich, and a couple of supermodels end up on a cruise ship, and it is meant to be a high-end cruise ship where the crew tend to your every need, and you have fine dining, and
it's like a mega yacht,
like a mega yacht, yeah, like for sure, like it's a very private. Yeah, not like a $3,000 NCO or Princess Cruises cruise ship. It yeah, like a like
this
you said,
is from Instagram fame,
super yacht, yeah,
billionaires.
And so it sort of starts out where everybody's taking pictures, and it's like, like Instagram heavy, and it's very influenced by social media, and everybody sort of is doing these scenes where let's show our best life instead of putting the phone down and just actually living your best life. Tragedy befalls. It turns into a bit of a castaway story. They're stranded on an island, and the power dynamics that it explores once it gets to the marooning on the island, it flips the gender roles and the power structure of society in a way that I find so incredibly fascinating, interesting, and I am sure that was one of the reasons that it won the Palm. I really like these narratives that explore what if women presidents had been in power for the last 50 years in America, and what if a woman was able to make the decisions from the dawn of time on how a family is run, and if they were the main breadwinners, and if they were the stronger species, and if they were the ones committing domestic violence. And I love these themes that turns our traditional narratives on their head and makes us think about things, and maybe, hopefully, by thinking about them, will allow us to think about them in a positive and an educating way, so we can eliminate the sort of negative behaviors. And I think by flipping the script and sort of showing, like, what would it be like, particularly for men, it's like, oh my God, like I'm being oppressed. Yeah, well,
help! I'm being oppressed. Being oppressed.
How do you think that feels? So yes, it does. I don't want to give away anything else about it. It is one of the for me, it was a very big surprise film. So I don't want to. That's all I'm going to say about it. I didn't give it a tremendously big star boost. There are some reasons for that. The second half of the movie is really good. It delivers in the third act.
It's a long film.
It's also a long film, of which all of it doesn't work. But I will say this: the opening scene will grab your attention. It's really, really good.
Yeah,
and it sort of follows these men supermodels auditioning. It is a great scene. It's humorous, it's funny, it's real, it's surreal. And the guy that wins this particular round of supermodeling is shown on the cruise reading a leather-bound copy of Ulysses, and I think it was the funniest joke of all time. And if you get that, please leave us a comment on Instagram, and I will like and follow you and give you any favor that you want. Yeah, look, that was. I liked it a lot. I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it because thematically, it's in sort of that May, December where we're exploring the power dynamics of women being in charge instead of men. And that fascinates me. And I want to see more of those types of films.
I enjoyed it. I watched this one with Mrs. B.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah. I had a look at my Letterboxd
recently.
No,
we've never talked about it.
I never logged it on Letterboxd. I looked at it recently and I was like, oh, I guess I didn't log it. What's funny, I had one of my coworkers actually recommended this film.
Yeah.
Off of the scene where there's mayhem on the yacht.
That was the reason that it did not get that bumped it down for me, that scene.
You didn't like that. Okay. Which was funny that's why he recommended it to me. It's just funny what certain people take away from films.
I don't like crass. That's just that for me.
Yeah.
Maybe crass isn't the best word, but it kind of is. I don't know. Either way, that
toilet humor.
Yeah, like that's just not my. It's just not my thing. I don't think it's funny. I don't think it's entertaining. I've never liked it. And because of that, that whole sort of scenario for that middle dissension, like it didn't service the story.
Yeah. It
kind of was. I felt like it served to be a gross out scene, of which it didn't need it because the film wasn't doing that, and it did not propel the narrative.
Well, the point was for poor people to see the rich people not having fun.
Fair enough.
That's what I got out of that scene, and I laughed so hard because I knew that's what the whole point was to imagine being a billionaire on a yacht and that happening.
Fair enough. Fair call.
Oh, life's unfair.
Maybe I will re-examine my thoughts and feelings on that.
Now, the movie is definitely way too long. but we enjoyed it. Yeah, overall.
Totally.
Yeah, overall. Yeah.
Well, you need to log that shit and put a rating on it.
I just logged it for you. Three and a half stars. I actually agreed with yours. I think that's what you had.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't a 4-star. And that's why I kind of found it odd with the whole 2022 Oscars.
Yeah. Those guys definitely didn't see Subtraction.
It's a conversation for another time, but yeah, Triangle of Sadness and everything. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting that all the Oscars stuff behind it, but yeah.
All right.
Well, yeah.
Let's move on to your next one.
Well, we had a bit of we didn't get canceled. A podcast didn't get canceled, but if you have been reading the news, we did hit the news with a scandal from our from our last draft from 2015 when I drafted the film Sicario by Denis Villeneuve, and the scandal's behind us.
The scandal. This is like
because I've watched it.
A thematic thread. The scandal is behind us, much like the
I finally
scandal.
watched it, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Now tune in.
Yeah.
I would like everybody to tune in to the next episode for finishing that thought.
Yeah. It's so stars Emily Blunt, Benicio del Toro, Josh Brolin, Victor Garber, John Bernthal, Daniel Kaluuya. Great cast and an interesting story. We were talking about it. I think you wanted to know my thoughts over text from Sicario. And I think I maybe responded with that Villeneuve really does good at. He's a builder of worlds. This wasn't my favorite Villeneuve movie, but that's not a negative. That's like saying this is a hands down all day, every day, a 4-star film, at least, depending on the day that you watch it. Brilliantly written. Great story, great cast. It just wasn't my favorite for Villeneuve. Storyline is FBI agents Emily Blunt, her character, and Daniel Kaluuya are kind of invited to be a part of a special government task force being run by Josh Brolin and a few other what seem to be like cowboy, I don't know, CIA, FBI, ex-Marine, like who knows? And it's about the drug war between the U.S. and Mexico on the border. And this task force is kind of the ones going under the radar that are kind of off the books. So if you are into Narcos, if you're into anything that's kind of about the drug war or kind of border life from Mexico and USA, it's a great film to watch for that specifically. Lord Marcus, you got some thoughts on this one?
I could have a whole episode on Mr. Villeneuve's movies, and including Sicario. I'll try to keep it just a little bit short, though. I would, for the purposes of recommendation, if you want to know my deep thoughts, send me a message or drop by and hang out with us, and we'll watch it and talk about it. I would pair this with the recent Alex Garland film Civil War, and I would also pair it with No Country for Old Men. And there's a thread that goes Josh Brolin obviously being in No Country for Old Men, but it is a West, like this Sicario is a Western film. It's just
a modern Western for sure.
It's a modern Western. And the gunfights and the sound editing, like it's not an action film, but it has action in it. So it's sort of a highbrow action film. And so it requires a thought process. So I think a lot of people expect an Alex Garland film to do something, and they hated Civil War. But I'm trying to build a case for Civil War and say, man, all you guys love Sicario, but you hated Civil War. Like they are of the same cloth. They really honestly are. They're made by fabulous directors. They take real life situations, and it's violent, but they're like nothing's. Your hand's not being held. You're not being told what to think. You're not told what side to take. And there's moral sides in this story, of which for me is what's so beautiful about it is that Emily Blunt is she is struggling with the moral dilemma of following the law of what she believes in and achieving outcomes, which actually makes better lives for people. And I think that is such a real thing that probably so many people in that type of agency are exposed to feeling, and probably need constant therapy about how to deal with that, because the bureaucratic red tape of getting through things to actually achieve results makes it impossible. And so you have to have some regulators, some outlaws that are willing to push the envelope a little bit to actually get some results. And I think this film just explores that very wonderfully, very subtly, very elegantly crafted and acted. And like Benicio del Toro, we can't say enough about him. He's one of our guys, like Willem Dafoe. I think he did respond to me as like, oh man, if I could have had a little bit more of him and him being evil or that. Yeah. But I think that his last scene with Emily Blunt was enough to seal the deal at the end. Oh,
but every time he shows up in the movie, I want more of him, and that was a thing. Yeah.
But here's what's genius about that is that, like, dude, do you think you would have a fonder memory of a trip to Paris if you were there for 3 days or you were there for 10 days?
Fair enough. Yeah, 3 days.
Because you're left wanting more, and this is the human condition. When we are left wanting more, we think about it, and it stays in our mind, as opposed to overstaying our welcome and getting bored with something. Would you rather be wanting more of Benicio del Toro, or would you rather him flooded every single scene and it been just purely about his character? It's a different total film, and you might even get bored with him. Now, I would say, George Miller, please examine the films of Denis, because, man, he has shown a map of how any kind of film can work without descending into average, mediocre Seville. I really like Sicario a lot. I think the sound editing was really good. Roger Deakins obviously did the cinematography.
Yeah.
And that dude doesn't make any mistakes ever.
We're like Roger Freakins.
He's freaky virtuoso Roger Deakins.
Yeah. I like, this is what Adam Naiman, a critic who we like, this is his more recent thoughts on his last rewatch. It just says, looked at the first and last scenes to jog my memory and still maintain this is an extraordinarily well-realized movie with extraordinarily dubious content.
Boom. Damon is a master of the visual language.
Sicario.
Boom.
This brings us to your last film to talk about, Lord Marcus.
Stay tuned for our next episode for more thoughts on Sicario. My last film for the Watchlist episode is not the most popular film in the world, but it is probably, well, maybe not by critics, but I think it's doing pretty good on Amazon. The Idea of You, which is directed by Michael Showalter. And it's an Amazon Prime release straight to streaming. And this stars Anne Hathaway. And the premise is a divorced mother at 40 years old attends a concert with her daughter, and the concert is a boy band, and she runs into one of the singers of the boy band, and they develop a relationship. So again, an older woman with a younger man, and it explores the dynamics between them and how they navigate their feelings for each other, and also how the perception of a mother and an older woman and how society sort of punishes women. It is. I won't get around it. Society punishes women where they don't punish men, and I think it's so unfair, and I hate it. And this film is got like an average Letterboxd rating of under 3.5. It is better than that, if not only for anything that it is a conversation starter. I think if we get more films that explore that power dynamic, role reversal, that this will be seen as one of that new vanguard of how to usher that in, how to get people to watch that kind of fare. It was extremely interesting. Anne Hathaway is gorgeous. The relationship was very believable. The chemistry was fantastic. But I'm just like, for nothing else, for as a conversation piece. Let's go to dinner with 10 men and 10 women and talk about this and talk about how would you feel if your relationship was denied because society was making you feel bad because it wasn't fair because Mr. B is dating a woman that's 20 years younger. If it was Mr. B dating someone 20 years younger than him, nobody would bat a fucking eye. They would never even be talked about. In fact, they would be celebrated. You'd be getting high fives, especially if you were a conservative Republican.
Yeah. Well, I'm not quite 40 yet, so it might be illegal.
No, I'm just saying, the point that I'm making is that, like, why are men held to different standards than women, and why can't women enjoy the same benefits of, like, if you want to have a relationship with someone, like, why is it okay when, and maybe it's not okay like in everything, but it's generally like glossed over, when a man leaves his wife of 30 years for a younger woman. It's okay when George Lucas does it. It's okay when David Lynch does it. It's okay when Woody Allen does it. It's not okay, but when a woman does it, it's like the Scarlet Letter.
Yeah.
It's like Joan of Arc.
The Scarlet Letter.
It's like, it's crucifixion. It's not just a little bit of bad mouthing in the press.
Yeah.
It's crucifixion. It is making people's lives an extraordinary hell. Now, why can't a woman enjoy, it's like, well, if I don't want to be with my old wrinkly husband, why can't I trade in for a younger model that appreciates me for who I am and makes me feel alive and makes me feel good? So as a conversation piece, The Idea of You for me is worth watching. But as a date night, my wife loved this film, and
I've been saving this one.
I enjoyed watching with her. It was a great date night film. I probably would not have watched it without her. I'm glad that I did. It was the perfect, like, if you're looking for a good film to watch for date night, this is such, particularly for married couples, I'd say. I can't say enough about it. As a conversation piece, it's not the greatest film overall. It could be like it's obviously like sort of made for streaming type of fare, but Anne Hathaway does a really good job. All of the acting is really, like, everything is serviceable. There's nothing that's just hokey and bad. It just happens. Like for me, the theme of it is it resonates. And I definitely gave it a big bump for the role reversal, of which that's a theme that I want to pursue, and I want to kind of encourage people to see those types of films. Like, just overall, I feel as a species that men may treat women better now than they ever have, but man, we've got millennia and millennia and millennia of sins and transgressions to make up for. And I want to have those conversations, and I want to contribute to that. So the best way for me to do that is to hand it off to people that really know how to do that through the visual language of film. And I would say, for me, I would encourage people to watch The Idea of You.
Boom.
Boom.
That'll be up soon for me and Mrs. B.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good. Oh my goodness.
This takes us to our last film from the watch list. We have both watched this. In fact, we watched this together.
We sure did.
For the first time.
For the first time for both of us. Yeah.
Yeah. 1985's After Hours. Martin Scorsese.
Mr. Sir King Scorsese.
What a phenomenal movie. I'm almost embarrassed that it took us till 2024 to watch it.
But this is a nice thing. Like, I don't, because there's so many great films out there that you have to be ready for the right films to hit you at the right time. Man, this one, yeah. I go ahead. My thoughts on After Hours is like, this is. It's like having Chinese water torture with the water just dripping on your forehead. It was so absurd that this guy's trying to get out of these crazy scenarios all night long. Man, it was like a fever dream. Yeah. I'll let you start off, and I will just.
It's not really full of actors, actresses that you're watching in all day, everyday cinema. Maybe why it's not talked about as much, but it's you could list it as a. Is it a thriller? It's kind of like a dramedy.
I'd say it's a black comedy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, black comedy,
absurdist thriller. It's sort of one of the great things about it is that it does kind of defy genre, or classification, or total classification.
It's so many genres. It's hard to put it into one.
I think as well is that because the lead actor Griffin Dunn was not really like he never made it into A-list status. That
he's been in some good movies, but yeah, he's never been really the A-list leading guy.
He was definitely like in '85. He was like, there were some chips thrown in on him, and he just never took his career anywhere. And I think that so. Scorsese's next film after that was Color of Money with Tom Cruise, and so like it's got Tom Cruise compared to Griffin Dunn. So like that is maybe why this film is largely overlooked, unless you're a big Scorsese freak. And so that we have been constantly sort of evolving as Scorsese appreciators. We keep on taking on more of his films that have been overlooked by us in the past. And yeah, look, I didn't expect to like it so much, and I was just blown away. Blown away.
Agreed. I don't know. We were both like silently skeptical about it until maybe the first 5 minutes, and it is a vibe. It's on 11 almost the whole time.
It really is, and you're like, I'll just my only really great thought about this is that, well, you just give the premise real quick, and then I will your premise, and I'll just I'll just give one thought, and then we'll move on.
Well, it tells the story of Griffin Dunn's character Paul Hackett, who's a back in the day a word processor, living in New York in the 80s. Who doesn't really have a love life, lives in an apartment by himself, a kind of a lonery loser, and really socially awkward. And he meets a girl at a diner coffee shop that's, kind of already later at night.
Reading Henry Miller.
Mm-hmm. And they hit up a conversation, and she ends up giving him her number to buy a statue from her flatmate, and madness ensues. He ends up calling the number and making his way across New York City to Soho late at night to meet up with a lady. And if you've maybe watched the more recent Safdie brothers film,
Good Times.
Yeah, it's very, very related to Good Times. They definitely ripped off After Hours for it, which I'm not upset about.
No, because that's a good homage, like especially when you let 30 years pass between paying your homage, where it could maybe feel to some like you were ripping things off when there's that time between it.
That was being hasty. It wasn't a rip off. It really gives a good homage to it because it's just really New York at night. And kind of like telling the story, nothing good happens after 12 a.m. Just go to bed.
And you got to, for current audiences, if you've never been to New York City, like New York City in 1985.
I've never been to New York City.
And if it will not be like anything that you've seen in the movies. It's so like it was different after obviously it was different after 2001. But it was largely different in the 90s than it was in the 80s. And so in 1985, New York City was just, it was an insane and crazy place that could have felt like straight out of a super hallucinogenic trip. And this film really captured like that vibe. But I'll just say this, that so basically Griffin Dunn as Paul Hackett is going, he wants a booty call. He's going out for the booty call.
Mm-hmm.
And everything about him getting there and then getting home or back to work, it's like the world conspires to keep him like I can't say enough about how Martin Scorsese directed this because he just keeps you on the edge. Like right about the time where you think he's going to get a win, like he takes 2 steps forward and he takes 5 steps back. Then he takes 8 steps forward and then he takes 20 steps back.
It's almost nauseating how hard it is for this guy to get home.
It's kind of like when you're in a dream and you just like the doorknob's right there and you know that safety's on the other side of the door, but nothing will allow you to actually touch the door handle to open the door.
Yeah, sleep paralysis.
This film was sleep paralysis. Like he's so close to getting out of a bad scenario and he just ends up in another one, which it makes the original scenario that much more difficult to complete.
It spirals into absurdity by the end.
But I think it was kind of absurd from the beginning, and it got really, really absurd. Man, we had Cheech and Chong running it.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because if you weren't, I was going to.
My goodness. Rosanna Arquette as well.
Yeah. Plays the love interest, Marcy.
Linda Florentino, who I'd only previously seen in Jade and Vision Quest, but Vision Quest I love. I hadn't seen her in too many things.
Oh, and John Hurt as well, who you know from the dad from Home Alone.
Oh my goodness,
as a bartender, which was an interesting cameo.
And Terry Garr as well. I was so pleasantly surprised. Like I just kept putting it off. It's like, oh, Griffin Dunn's the lead. I'm not hating on Griffin Dunn, but I'm just not feeling it. Like I want some De Niro. That's a mistake. Watch this film. My goodness. It just sort of justifies for me like Scorsese as king of the 80s.
Yeah. Well, and king as well.
King of comedy, yeah.
Yeah.
Boom. I liked it a lot. I loved it.
I loved it as well.
You're crazy. It's a good midnight film. Watch it at midnight. Like watch it when it's taking place.
Yeah, it is definitely not a daytime film. It is meant to be watched. This is a very good friend watch movie.
Yeah.
When I was watching it, all it did was remind me of watching movies with my friends in high school.
It is that type of vibe too. Like you don't watch this with a romantic interest because there's no like it does not paint romance very well, but it's extremely funny and interesting, and the dialogue is extremely funny and interesting. Promotes conversation, but it's just kind of it's kind of an 80s adventure that 2 guys would have. These absurd things keep you from just having a boring night. My goodness. Yeah. Anything but a boring night there.
That is for sure. I mean,
they weren't watching Furiosa in that film.
It didn't remind me of any nights in Sydney, but yeah, it does remind me of some of those late nights where you're like, it's time for bed now. We need to find any and every way to get home because nothing else good is going to happen. Add After Hours to your watch list, please.
Do it.
For the love of cinema.
Do it.
And the love and undying love of Lord Marcus and Mr. B. Do you have any closing thoughts, Lord Marcus, from your watch lists?
Yes. Well, maybe not from my watch list, other than if you've got the capacity to watch Subtraction, I really enthusiastically really want to recommend it. The Beast is playing in theaters if you're in Australia right now. There's a lot of reviews coming out from the States as well, so I think maybe it's just gotten it's
getting a bit more legs.
It's getting a little bit more legs, but it's not going to do extremely well, even though it's getting most of the critic reviews are very good, but it's just not the kind of film that appeals to large mass audiences. So if you're not aware of it, The Beast and Subtraction are my number 2 recommendations from my watch list.
Yeah, I'd probably really recommend. I love Dream Scenario so much. I think it fits. Just about anybody could watch it because there's not a lot to understand about it. You might not love it by the end of it, but I think it's an accessible film. You can understand what's going on. I think it does cause you to think. It is very much worth your time, Dream Scenario. And then I just had so much fun watching After Hours. If you can get the right mojo for that movie, it's phenomenal.
Yeah,
I want to say you're going to love it.
If you find yourself at 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night, not ready to go to sleep.
Yeah.
After Hours is the film for you.
And not knowing what to watch.
Yeah.
If you do not know what to watch at night, watch After Hours.
Yeah, don't put on David Letterman reruns.
Well, thanks for listening. You can follow along on our film journeys on our Instagram if you would like. You can find us at The Film Dogs, or you can also find us on our Facebook page, The Film Dogs.
We're all just lost souls swimming in a fishbowl year after year.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Remember, life's too short for bad cinema. Woof.